Impact Interview is sponsored by the Pocono Mountains, where small town charm meets big adventures. Book your trip today by visiting PoconoMountains.com.
We're back on Nittany Game Week and honored to be joined by the 2022 Pennsylvania Sports Writer of the Year, Audrey Snyder. Audrey, one of the most respected reporters on the Penn State football beat, and is so good at her profession, they want her to teach the upcoming journalists and the next generation as an adjunct lecturer at PSU. Thanks for the time, Audrey. Always a pleasure to catch up with you.
You got to talk. Good to see you, even during, I don't know, do we call it an off season? Is there an off season? What do we call it?
Well, I know I reached out to you about doing the interview, and I said, well, there really isn't any off-season anymore, but we'll get to that here in just a minute. First off, it's a shame we really didn't have much to talk about in this last Penn State football season. But look, let's get right to it. One of the wildest 7 and 6 seasons that I think any program has ever had to go through, and you were there for it every step of the way. What's the best way to describe what we all just witnessed for Penn State football, and how challenging was it to stay on top of all of the moving parts?
I'll use the word surreal, but even that doesn't feel like it does it justice. I mean, there are still days where you're like, oh yeah, that happened this year. That happened, right? There was a coaching change in October, a 50-plus day coaching search. Next time we see Penn State football in a meaningful game, they're going to be wearing Adidas and not Nike, right? Like, that gets lost in the shuffle. The fact that your starting quarterback got hurt in October and that so many of your NFL draft hopefuls just didn't really pan out. It was a surreal, bizarre, wacky year. It was strangely also one of my favorite to cover just because it did not go how any of us thought. It was an absolute challenge trying to stay on top of it every step of the way, because as soon as you thought you could take a breath, that everything was good, at least for a day or two, something else would happen, right? And even all the way down to the wire when you go through the coaching search and you're like, oh, it looks like they're going to get Kalani Sitake. Oh, wait, no, actually, no, they're not. The search is still going on, and they end up with Matt Campbell. So, yeah, it's been a wild few months, which is also crazy when you try to think back to, oh, yeah, all of this has happened really since October. I mean, it's been crazy.
I don't think anybody thought anything like this would happen. Certainly when James Franklin was pushing his chips into the middle of the table at Big Ten Media Day, saying it was the best roster, coaching staff, and players at that point. Look, the loss to Oregon in overtime began the spiral, of course. But for me, it was halftime of the UCLA game where we knew we either had a huge comeback or a close call, or we had one of the greatest upsets in program history on the other side of that, on the bad side of that. So take us through the UCLA debacle and then the scene after the Northwestern loss that, of course, finished off James Franklin in Happy Valley.
Yeah, I mean, that UCLA loss, as you're watching it unfold, you're like, okay, no, this can't happen. This isn't going to happen. There's no way. And then once it becomes clear in the fourth quarter that, oh yeah, this is going to happen, Penn State's losing this game, in my mind, instantly in that moment, it switched to, okay, it's now time to have the conversation about James Franklin and his future and if it's here, if it shouldn't be. And so that's right where my mind went was, hey, we need to map out whether or not there's a coaching change. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, you're dealing with somebody's livelihood. And I think oftentimes fans will say, oh, this guy should be fired or that guy should be fired. And it's like, you have to be really sure as a reporter when you get to that point and that you don't get there maybe too early. And so I thought I was kind of like right on time with that of, hey, let's have the conversation about James's job. And then when it goes into Northwestern and once they lost that game, I mean, the tenor in the stadium, the boos, I mean, I was surprised. And I've covered this program pretty much every day since 2010 as a student, and I've done it professionally since 2012. And you're covering it and you're like, wow, the home crowd has just totally turned on this coach and this team. And I think maybe some of that is perhaps has to do with NIL and rev share. And you feel as a fan that you're invested, that you're paying for this. And if the product isn't matching your commitment, you maybe feel a little more inclined to vocally, share your displeasure. But yeah, I mean, after that Northwestern game, it was clear to me that something was probably going to happen with a coaching change within the next 24, 48 hours. And at that point, it's like, okay, I got to make sure my story's ready to go. And on top of that, oh, wow, is this actually going to happen? But I mean, the fan reaction you could not bring James Franklin out for another home game. Like it had just gotten that toxic. And I think too, in fairness to him, by doing it in October, it gave him enough time to figure out what he wanted to do, which ultimately helped Penn State get out from under that big buyout.
Coaching search keeps the weird times rolling is the way that I would, phrase it, because we didn't know where it was going to go. He's one of the first ones. There's a vacancy, one of the first ones out there, and then one of the last ones to be filled. So I guess what was that like to try and stay on top of that? Because there was a lot of guys connected to the job that got massive pay raises and maybe were never connected to it. They're talking about the agents behind the scenes, everything that was coming about it, and then ultimately landing with someone they probably should have been looking at the very beginning in Iowa State's Matt Campbell.
For sure. I came up with a list on my Substack, Inside the Lions, right after James Franklin was let go, within like the next 24, 48 hours. And I said, hey, if I were to pick three candidates, here's who they are. And among those three was Matt Campbell, because I just think you look at the body of work, you look at the profile, he's consistently done more with less, right? It's less financial resources, it's less commitment from Iowa State. And I think probably a good way for Penn State fans to think about it is a lot of the same things that Campbell was up against at Iowa State in terms of getting their athletic director to commit to the program in this era of rev share is a lot of the stuff that Cale Sanderson was up against when he really didn't want to leave Iowa State, but was like, I can't stay at my alma mater, because they just felt that they took it as far as they could. So, I think if you kind of look at it in that context, it's like, yeah, Matt Campbell made a lot of sense, but how Penn State got to that point was certainly interesting, was certainly a journey to say the least. I will say too, like, coaching search season is crazy in and of itself, but you have to think about who is representing these individuals, which is the agent, and what is the agent floating out there in terms of financial figures, in terms of interest. Are they just trying to get their client a raise, or is the client actually interested? And so Penn State, I talked to a lot of people, but got really far along with Kalani Sitake. But at the end of the day, he changes his mind, stays at BYU, and you're scrambling, trying to get in contact with Matt Campbell, because Matt goes about it so differently in that he has representation, but he's not one of those guys in college football that's always out there looking for another job and trying to move on. So it was certainly interesting how they got there. But at the end of the day, I think you say, okay, did Penn State get who they should have gotten? I say yes. Did it take them longer to do it than they should have? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think they ended up with the right guy as well. And so let's keep it going chronologically. They just closed the transfer portal, which also brings back the point of the offseason for you. Is there one? So you had to cover that. How do you think they did? And I guess the difficulties of the job now, because you got to stay on top of so much stuff in the offseason. How much has that changed for you?
For sure. I remember my first few seasons when I was at Penn Live, then I was at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette covering Penn State football, and fans would say, well, it must be great. You probably don't do anything in the offseason, right? Well, there always was stuff to do in the offseason, whether it was like I would do some higher ed stuff at the Post-Gazette covering the Board of Trustees, or you'd cover other Penn State sports, whether basketball, football, because you'd have like the ramp up to signing day, which was different then. Do a little bit of hockey, whatever. Well, now football has become a year-round sport, a year-round coverage. And so for me, you go from literally covering the Pinstripe Bowl to saying, all right, it's the offseason now. The season's been done for 12 hours. The portal's coming. Like, who are they going to target in the portal? Penn State has a general manager now. What's the GM thinking? What's the financial strategy? How do you construct this roster? In this era of NIL and rev share, who are you paying? Who are you paying the most? It is so different. And I think it's a lot for us to wrap our heads around. I think it's got to be a lot for fans to try and absorb too, because it's also, I think about it this way, right? Ethan Grunkemeyer. Penn State fans started to fall in love with this guy's story and the way he improved throughout the season. Well, I went to Ethan's high school for, a story when he was being recruited, met him, met his family. You kind of put in the legwork on those relationships, and it's like, all right, he's gone. Rocco Becht is going to be here for 1 year. I don't know Rocco Becht yet. We've never met, and so you're trying to forge a relationship with a player who will probably be here for, 10 months, by the time it's all said and done. So it's different from that aspect, but yeah, it is totally year-round. And so for me, over my Substack, Inside the Lions, it is all football all the time. And I think, too, that's... this fan base, Todd. That is the pulse of this fan base. You see people around town in State College, they want to know, what do you think of the quarterback? What do you think of the defense? What do you think of this, of that? It's all football all the time. And now, the calendar certainly aligns with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it if the appetite wasn't there for the material, for sure. And here's the other part of it. Game days have really changed for you. I look at the calendar and I go, I can't believe I've been doing this TV thing for over 30 years. And I'm always interested and fascinated that the newspaper writers, or all the writers, are got their phones out, especially you. At the end of the game, they're getting video and posting it. It's getting a lot of views. They're doing a great job with that. And then us in TV, we're writing web articles and we're doing more stuff that you used to do. So, but that's just the way that it is. So for you, when you think about a game day now, what is the difference now? Because you're getting there early, you're trying to get pregame video, and then of course on the field afterwards to get those emotional moments.
For sure, it's all encompassing. And that's really how I've always tried to approach the job, especially because with social media now, it's like you want the fans to feel like they're there. And I always think about it from my own habits as a sports fan, a sports consumer. What kind of content do I want, right? What do I want to read or hear about or see and experience on a game day? And then how do I bring that to my audience? So, yeah, I mean, I think probably one of the biggest misnomers of our jobs is that it's great, you cover games, it must be awesome to get in for free. While the games are great, that's a very small part of the job, right? Game days for us, if it's a noon kick, probably in the press box by 9, probably getting out of there by 7 o'clock at night after writing multiple stories, doing multiple live in-game threads throughout the day, posting to social media, taking your own photos, doing a podcast at the end of the night over at the Nittany Dispatch. So it's just so much. Like, you're not one thing anymore. I think that's true for all of us, right? It's like you're doing some writing, I'm doing some video stuff. You're all trying to capture and tap into a Penn State fan base that we know is rabid, that we know is everywhere. And because of that fan base, that's why I have a job doing what I do, because Penn State fans care so much and they care year round.
Look, the only constant is change, and as the revenue streams have dried up for newspapers, it can be difficult to find consistent outlets. How have you adapted to the changing media landscape out there?
For sure. It has been constant change. I mean, my career in this industry, probably like just about everybody's on this side, the traditional print side, you're constantly trying to figure out what that next move is. And for me, I started my own Substack in August. It's called Inside the Lions. It's going exceptionally well, better than I could have ever imagined. But that was a result of my job being eliminated at The Athletic. And, an organization that I worked for almost 7 years saying, hey, we don't want to cover Penn State anymore. We're changing our strategy, which, hey, in the industry, we all know strategy changes come all the time. You can't figure them out. You can't try to figure them out. But for me, it was an example of, hey, you know what? It's time to bet on myself and see if I can do this as an independent publication. I mean, truly, it is 100% reader supported. Like, what I'm doing right now is completely backed by fans. There are more than 1,300 paid subscribers, which is a number that I'm super, super proud of, because truly, you see the lights on behind me, Todd? That's how we're doing it. And so, you just want to keep building this thing out and keep taking fans where I think they want to go. So many of the limitations in the print industry, you'd put a story out, you never knew what the audience thought or felt. Well, now it's like, hey, let's do a mailbag. When Matt Campbell's hired, let's do an instant, ask me anything thread right there. And let me just kind of info dump for 45 minutes of here's what I'm thinking, here's what I know. And we did that all throughout the coaching search. I'll keep doing that over on my Substack. It's just a more direct avenue from the readers to me. And also it lets me to actually get to know them, which is just such a different concept when you're coming from a print background.
Yeah, I think you can attest that, look, there's growth when you're uncomfortable, and it has forced a lot of former writers into the world of entrepreneurship. And so that's, you're kind of figuring it out as you go from the business side of it. And I would imagine that's one of the lessons that you take into the classroom as an adjunct lecturer at your alma mater, Penn State. I'd like to get a sneak peek at your syllabus, Audrey. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how difficult a grader that you are. We could probably go on somebody else's Substack and figure that out, how you do. But what's the message that you try to give them as they leave the class and enter the working world? What do you want your students to take with them?
For sure. My biggest things in the classroom are that I'm going to make you a better writer. And whether you are going into journalism or not, and I get a lot of public relations students, a lot of telecommunications students, a lot of broadcast students, I still believe, and I know it can be scary in the world of AI, I still believe that we need writers and that we need effective communicators. And I'm really big on making a classroom that's inclusive and welcoming. And I think too, it's like let's work on social skills as much as it's about interviewing. I think really right now, especially, you have to be able to tap into the 18 to 22-year-old brain and their mindset of, hey, how can we make this fun and engaging? But how can we tell good stories? How can we be effective communicators? And so I love doing it. I have a background in secondary education, so it's something that I'm really passionate about. But yeah, I've been an adjunct at Penn State for, gosh, almost a decade at this point. But yeah, I love teaching intro to news writing and kind of sharing what I do in the real world with my students, who sometimes I then share a press box with on Saturdays.
Great perspective from Audrey. Really appreciate the time. Make sure you go to NittanyGameWeek.com for all of our Impact interviews, along with other web-exclusive content, like our Nittany Connect network of businesses. Don't go anywhere. Still to come, we're just a week away from outdoor hockey at West Shore Home Field at Beaver Stadium. How the preparations for the games are coming together. We're heading into the final minutes on Nittany Game Week.